Ontario is investing some serious capital for the future of Fort Frances. On Monday, Minister Greg Rickford, who also represents the Borderland community at Queen's Park, announced $2.7 million in funding for 4 different municipal assets, with more than half of that dedicated towards upgrading and improving the town's Memorial Sports Centre. Only 22 years old, but the Memorial Sports Centre in Fort Frances is getting a massive overhaul with an investment of $1.7 million from the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation. The announcement came Monday from Kenora-Rainy River MPP Greg Rickford, who also serves as the chair of the NOHFC, which underwent a restructuring over a year ago to make it easier for communities to access funding. He says rec centres are the heart and soul of a community and play an important role in the health and well-being of residents.
I always like to say that the smaller the town or city gets, the more important the recreation facility becomes to them. That's how kids go on to play in the NHL or the Scotties Tournament of Hearts or swim on an Olympic team as we have out in Kenora.
Upgrades to the facility include the replacement of its pool, the expansion of weight and cardio rooms, and the installation of new change rooms, including a gender-neutral change room. Rickford was joined by Fort Frances Mayor June Call, who says recreation and culture are one of the more expensive aspects of municipal services.
We have to rely on funding like this to be able to manage to upgrade in any way or refurbish anything. So this is going to go a long way to helping us finish the project that was started last year as well.
That project is part of a $5.2 million endeavor funded by all 3 levels of government. Several other municipal amenities were also on the receiving end of support Monday, including $376,000 to improve the docks and security at the Sorting Gap Marina and $466,000 to build an extension to the Fort Frances Senior Centre. Call says that extension will make it much easier to host events at the centre.
I help out with a local bingo that goes on every Friday for the seniors, and sometimes they almost have to stop and wait for people to stop talking because they're all in the same room, and the people who are listening for bingo calls can't hear what's being said.
Last but certainly not in the least, Rickford also announced a $148,000 investment for the Fort Frances Airport. While the airport in nearby International Falls remains popular due to flight availability, he believes Fort Frances can be competitive and says the town was realistic in its strategic plan for modernizing the airport, adding it will play a role in the pandemic recovery.
Airports and air travel has been one of the hardest hit sectors in the pandemic, so pre-positioning that airport to be a place for larger planes to land and a safer, better piece of infrastructure for that kind of commercial activity, I think, is an essential part of their plan.
On the heels of those announcements in Fort Frances, the Kenora-Rainy River MPP was added again in Kenora on Wednesday, announcing almost $4 million in funding for the city's recreation centre and the rowing club on Rabbit Lake. $3.6 million will go towards the rehabilitation of the recreation centre and will include improvements to the baseball diamonds and tennis courts. Meanwhile, $121,000 will improve infrastructure at the rowing club to improve the organization's ability to host rowing regattas. The federal government has committed support for some of the area's First Nations battling a rise in COVID-19 cases. The Sioux Lookout First Nations Health Authority is reporting a total of 406 active cases across its 16 communities as of Friday. There are 164 cases in Mishkegogumeng, a community of 1,300 people near Pickle Lake. Pikangikum has 81 people infected, and Nebitung First Nation now up to 91 active cases. The federal government was announced by this Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu on Thursday during her weekly COVID-19 update for First Nations in the region.
This morning, Minister Blair announced that an RFA had been approved for Mishkegogumeng First Nation in Ontario, which currently is dealing with an outbreak and increases in cases. Similarly, a request for assistance has also been approved today for Ibumatang First Nation.
The request for assistance will allow Canadian Rangers to help with the various needs of the communities, as a large number of residents are either isolating or recovering from COVID-19. The Northwestern Health Unit is sounding the alarm over a steep rise in syphilis cases in that part of the region. From 2020 to 2021, cases of the sexually transmitted infection increased by 107%, continuing an upward trend since 2018. The typical incidence rate for prior to 2018 was 2.9 cases per 100,000 people, but that number jumped to 70 in 2020 and then more than doubled to 145 in 2021. 46% of the cases last year were in Sioux Lookout, 36% were in Kenora, and 9% were in Fort Frances. Medical Officer of Health Dr. Kit Young-Hoon addressed the issue this week at her weekly news conference and spoke about where she thinks where the increase is stemming from.
Perhaps individuals may not have sought treatment and may not be as engaged in, following using condoms and other forms of protecting themselves during this time. So perhaps, maybe it could be other things such as lack of access to treatment, lack of access to testing. Perhaps that could have all exacerbated the increase that is being seen.
Long-term care capacity is about to expand in several communities around the Northwest. An announcement made Friday by the province will see a total of 55 new beds at facilities in Atikokan, Marathon, and Manitowaj. The announcement comes as a welcome surprise for the CEO of the Atikokan General Hospital, which is on the receiving end of 22 of those new LTC beds.
You're either going to stay in the hospital, even though you're actually more applicable for a long-term care bed, or you're going to be staying home and trying to get services at home.
That is what life is like for people on wait lists looking for access to long-term care in smaller communities across the Northwest. But that is about to change for residents in Manitowaj, Marathon, and Atikokan. The province has now greenlit construction projects to bring a combined total of 55 new long-term care beds in those three communities. Ontario's Minister of Long-Term Care, Paul Calandra, says those beds, along with 73 other new and 100 upgraded beds located elsewhere in Northern Ontario, are part of a $6.4 billion commitment.
And this is an unprecedented bill. The investment will lead to over 30,000 net new beds and about 28,000 upgraded long-term care beds across the province. This is the largest building program and investment in long-term care in Canadian history.
Santé Manitowaj Health will see an expansion of 18 new beds, bringing the total there to 27. And Marathon will see the construction of a new long-term care wing at the Wilson Memorial Hospital to accommodate 14 new beds. The announcement is being welcomed by Atikokan General Hospital CEO George Van Slyke. Her facility currently has 26 long-term care beds that run at nearly full capacity, and the senior population in Atikokan is expected to grow by 10.8% over the next 8 years. There are a few details as to what the 22-bed expansion will look like, but Van Slyke has an idea as to how it will be integrated into the hospital.
The general idea right now is there's a space in front of our rehab department, which is currently the staff parking lot. So there's an opportunity to build there because then it's going to be a logical connection to the existing long-term care, and then we'll go from there.
All three projects are expected to begin construction in the spring of 2023. In less than 2 weeks, the Dryden Police Service will be no more as the Ontario Provincial Police takes over policing duties in the small city. Last year, Council voted in favor of disbanding the municipal service in favor of the OPP, citing long-term cost savings. However, the city will still be on the hook for disbandment costs. Dryden's Chief Administrative Officer, Roger Nesbitt, says there is still a lot to look at from an equipment and infrastructure standpoint, but he notes the DPS building, which has been deemed unusable by the OPP, will have a temporary tenant in the coming months.
Conversations are ongoing with leadership, municipal leadership, on what the building will be repurposed to. Nothing definite yet, but conversations are ongoing. We will be using that location as a temporary City Hall location when we do the renovations here on our building on the Van Horn location.
Nesbitt says Council looked at a proposed budget for disbandment and takeover costs in November. We'll take another look at that budget this month. The official handoff from the DPS to OPP will take place at 12 noon on February 24th. Transportation Safety Board investigators are pointing to a dislodged retainer ring as the likely cause of a helicopter crash near Nipigon in June of last year. The water bucket helicopter was returning from firefighting duty to the M&R base in Nipigon when it experienced a sudden loss of tail rotor thrust and a loss of control. The pilot issued a mayday call and was forced to attempt a landing in a bush area below. He suffered serious injuries but is now fully recovered. The helicopter had recently been reassembled upon returning to Canada after operating overseas. The TSB final report states that for some undetermined reason, a retainer ring was not sitting properly, ultimately causing the tail rotor to fail. The agency suggests using a mirror to inspect retainer rings in helicopter tail sections, as they can often be difficult to view during assembly and safety checks. When we come back, a school that was already over capacity when it opened 2 years ago gets the go-ahead to expand. A school in Fort Frances, which has not had an official grand opening, is going back into construction mode. This comes following an announcement by the province Tuesday that will see a physical expansion at St. Mary Catholic School to address a growing student body. The school opened its doors to students in January of 2020 and was already at 116% capacity before the world was thrown into the global pandemic, requiring even more space for students to distance appropriately. And now, 2 years later, officials with the Northwest District Catholic School Board say they've completely run out of space for students at St. Mary.
At that time, we knew that enrollment was likely to be over capacity for the school, but since it has opened, we have gone even further over capacity and are currently utilizing other learning spaces for our classrooms.
On Tuesday, Robinson was joined by Kenora Rainy River MPP Greg Rickford and several students to announce the creation of 69 new spaces for students at a price tag of $2.6 million. Rickford believes this project, plus the investments made at several municipal assets the day prior, will set Fort Frances and the next generation up for success.
We're getting Fort Frances ready for a new horizon. We believe those economic opportunities are there, and we believe that kids want to be in their community and go to a school that they can be proud of. You can't have smaller classroom sizes without more classroom space, and that's what St. Mary's has done. This building was actually built with expansion in mind.
No date has been set for when the project, which equates to 3 classrooms, will begin or will be complete by. But Robinson says should a proposal to build the expansions off-site, then install the prefabricated units be successful, it will shorten the timeline from a normal construction schedule. Now, it might come as a surprise, but there was a benefit to switching how students learned during the pandemic, or at least that is what the Superior Greenstone District School Board is looking to investigate when it comes to using quadmesters instead of semesters. Back in the early days of the pandemic, school boards scrambled to find ways to limit the chances of exposure to COVID-19 for students. One of the strategies was to use quadmesters, where students had fewer classes but spent more time in those classes. Nicole Morden-Cormier is the Director of Education for the SGDSB. She says for classes where students needed more time to focus on a project, like an art or shop class, having 150 minutes of time devoted to working on that project instead of the usual 75 made it much easier for students to complete and expand their learning process on that project.
It could look, we haven't, of course, had our planning done yet, but it could look very much like morning portion of the day. There are courses that are offered that are 150 minutes. And then halfway through that semester, those courses change to another set of courses that are again 150 minutes. So it really benefits our students.
Morden-Cormier says the school board is looking to launch the study in the next few months and will span the 2020-2023 school year once consultation with area First Nations and the Ministry of Education takes place. Statistics Canada is out with its census, and 2 northwestern Ontario communities are listed in the top 5 in Ontario, but not in a good way. The city of Dryden leads the pack, taking the first place in the category of municipality with at least 5,000 inhabitants, with the highest rate of population decline in Ontario at 4.7%. Statistics show Ontario's smallest city dropped from just over 7,700 residents to just short of 7,400 residents between 2016 and 2021. But Dryden is not alone. The town of Fort Frances also took 3rd place in the top 5 decline category, with a decline of 3.5%, losing a total of 273 residents in the same time period. On a national scale, Dryden and Fort Frances placed 12th and 25th respectively in the top 25 communities with the greatest population decline. Things appear to be returning to normal at the municipal office in Emo following a series of resignations and investigations of workplace harassment late last year that had town officials questioning the office's ability to provide service. Documents obtained by TBT News in November confirmed the Ministry of Labour was conducting an investigation into allegations of workplace harassment that stemmed from a complaint regarding the employer not conducting an appropriate investigation into another complaint, as well issues with the workplace harassment program. A special council meeting in late November revealed the MOL had conducted a field visit and key staff members were absent. The township later brought in former Fort Frances CAO Doug Brown to carry out the duties for the town on an interim basis. Emo Mayor Harold McQuaker says things have stabilized and he is happy with the direction things are going, but he notes there has been some difficulty in locating qualified applicants.
Our interim CAO is doing a great job. We have a new sec treasurer. She's doing a wonderful job, and we have another lady at the door for the time being, also doing a wonderful job. The mine took a lot of our talent. OSB Barwick takes a lot of our talent, but people move around and whatnot. And no, we're quite fortunate for the time being, and very happy with what we have.
When it came to the question as to who would take over from Brown when his term expires, McQuaker could only say that they would be dealing with that issue at a later date. Coming up after the break, a group of loggers on a stretch of highway on Highway 11 are lending a helping hand to a moose in need. A Thunder Bay logging crew went above and beyond their regular duties this week by rescuing a moose that had fallen through the ice and was trapped in the frigid winter water. Mitchell Ringos has the story.
It's not every day you come across a moose, but to find one stuck in a lake is a very different story. This cow moose, along with the calf, was first spotted by Byron Holbick early Monday morning while he was heading to work along Highway 11 between Chappaqua and Atikokan.
Came across the bridge and just, 700 meters, 800 meters past that, they were running down the road in front of me in the morning. And they ran off to the left to the Windigoostawan Lake, the same lake that she fell in. So I figured, by my estimation, she had probably been in there all day.
Darren Wally was first down on the ice, and once he deemed it safe to walk on, a call was sent out to the crew about the situation, asking for help. Wally, Holbick, and co-workers Mark Wellington and Jordan Hay knew the moose wouldn't survive without a helping hand, so they sprung into action. The crew used a power saw and some poles to create a channel about 25 feet long in the opposite direction from the channel the moose made while struggling to get out. With some encouragement from the crew and a stick used to nudge the moose along, they were finally able to get her to shallow water where she first tried to get out.
When she collapsed on the ice, it was kind of a relief, but also a worry because she kind of laid sideways. You can see in the video she laid sideways. She was really exhausted.
After about 6 minutes of the moose recovering just on the edge of the ice, she was finally able to stand up out of the water, which Darren Wally says was a one-of-a-kind experience.
It was pretty amazing, and that was really the only reason that I personally recorded it, was just for memories. It was pretty good once we seen her kind of coming up in the shallow, and then she started climbing up. Then I was like, okay, she's going to be good and fine, and it was nice to see her walk off.
I mean, we all thought it was our duty to do that. Like, I saw a moose in the water, and I heard about it, and I'm like, right away, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there, and we're going to do what we can to get it out. And I think we all put ourselves in danger, but we didn't think about it. We just thought about saving the moose.
And just before walking off, the moose stopped for a few seconds to look back at the crew, which they say almost felt like a thank you. The moose was then able to head back into the woods to be reunited with her calf. Mitchell Ringos, TBT News.
The fire departments in 4 borderland communities are looking to bolster their ranks with new volunteer firefighters. The Alberton, Chapel, Emo, and Lavalley fire departments are looking for a total of 34 new recruits split between the 4 townships, which is led by a single fire chief, Tyrell Griffith. Currently, the 4 communities rely heavily on mutual aid from each other when incidents occur. He says volunteer firefighting is a very big time commitment, and it's hard to find people with enough free time on their hands to take on the rigorous training regimen it takes to become a volunteer firefighter.
Well, the training, we haven't done ourselves any favors with the amount of training that is required to be able to do some of the more dangerous things. So people shy away because of the amount of time, the amount of commitment that is required to be able to be a full firefighter, and we're asking them to do it for no pay or very little pay. So that's definitely a struggle.
Griffith says the current roster has 24 to 40 members, and if all the positions are filled in this recruitment drive, it will allow some of the older members the ability to retire. Asachigo Lake First Nation is now a millionaire after winning a $1 million Lotto Max Millions prize. Dean Beardy's windfall comes from the December 7th draw. The 58-year-old grandfather says he almost cried when he found out he'd won and had to convince himself it was real. Beardy says he celebrated with his parents over tea and cookies. He now plans to build a chapel in Sachigo Lake, which is located about 425 kilometers north of Sioux Lookout. The provincial election is less than 4 months away, and local MPP Judith Monteith-Farrell is welcoming the NDP's membership from support from Andrea Horwath as their party leader. More than 85% of delegates to the Ontario NDP delegation gave Horwath the thumbs up this past weekend as the party prepares for an election on June 2nd. Delegates voted by secret ballot to either support Horwath or to hold a leadership contest. The vote indicates strong support for her platform, which includes a $20 minimum wage as well as a $10 a day daycare plan. Monteith Farrell says Horwath is in tune with her party's members and fully supports her bid to become the next Premier of Ontario.
Definitely a leader that listens, and she is adaptive to, what the party wants and what the membership wants. And so that is a real strength in a leader. We agree that the vision is for a better Ontario where no one's left behind. And in this time when we are really knowing that many people are sort of struggling, we want to make sure that things that we hold dear are actually going to come true. So
Horwath has led the New Democrats since 2009, and this will be her 4th election campaign as NDP leader. Monteith Farrell says adding mental health supports, affordable dental care, and accessible housing stand among her top priorities for the Northwest. And that's how things wrapped up this week in Northwestern Ontario. We hope that you enjoyed the show, and we look forward to bringing you the news next week on Northwest Newsweek.